Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and Theresa May has announced the date for the Brexit Cup final, 14th of March. Nominally, what the news here is the vote that was supposed to be taking place next week on the final settlement is being postponed until the 14th of March. But that's not news. We all knew about that. In fact, what actually annoys me is all these MPs, with mock surprise and anger saying, oh, she's postponed it again. Who'd have thunk it? Right, let's just go through, shall we? The withdrawal agreement was arranged and agreed months ago. We were supposed to be having a vote in Parliament in December, which itself was at least a couple of months after it could have taken place. Then the day before, Theresa May said, actually, I don't think people are going to vote for this. And to which everyone else went, no, they're not. And then she went, oh, should we think of something else? No, I know. What we'll do, we'll just put the vote forward a month. Right, okay. So then Parliament got to have a vote on it in January. January, they voted it down, record numbers, blah, blah, blah. Theresa May stood up and said, well, what she wanted to do was stand up and say, right, well, according to the European Union Withdrawal Act, I'm going to go away now for 3 weeks and have a think about it. But ahead of this, Parliament had changed that act, amended it, so that she only had 3 days. 3 sitting days, well, that basically meant a week. And she was furious about this. In fact, it was quite remarkable, the level of genuine annoyance she had at this. Parliament using democracy against me, the Prime Minister, how dare they? And, you sort of think, well, why was she so angry about it? Surely she already had put forward this vote by several weeks. Surely she must already have been thinking about what she would do if Parliament voted it down anyway. No, that's not the reason. The reason was because it was quite clear at that point that her plan was to run down the clock. And so has proved to be the case. It should be a surprise to no one. So she came back a week later and said, right, here's my plan B. It's basically plan A, but actually, if you're really clever, you can turn an A into a B. So what do you want to do about it? And then her MPs basically said, go to the EU and get the backstop removed. That's the issue. And anyone who pays any attention to this knows that that is something you can't remove. It's ridiculous. So that's basically sending her to waste time for a couple of weeks. And I think it was supposed to be a couple of weeks. So if the vote had taken place in a few days in this coming week, that would have been 3 weeks later already. So it had already been put back another week. And she'd laid the seeds for this as well, because she'd been saying, oh, the negotiations, they're not quite there. They're going very well, though, but not quite there. This is in stark contrast to the rest of the EU. I don't know what she's talking about. We've said we're not changing it. We'll give you more assurances if you want, but that's it. Satisfies no one. So, it's been now postponed till the 14th. Now, that is quite telling, because here are the two scenarios that in my mind are playing out here. One, I've already talked about both of these separately, but now we've got a date. In order to save her party, she is prepared, even as a Remainer, and that was actually quite funny, sorry, a little aside. When she went to Brussels this week, she was met with, on the side of the Parliament building, a huge banner with a quote from her saying how damaging it would be for the UK to leave the EU, obviously from before the referendum. A little bit of humour there. Who says the Europeans don't have a sense of humour? Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. So it could well be that she is prepared to take the country out of the EU without a deal in order to appease the ERG and keep her party together. We already know she's putting party above country, regardless of what she's up to, because with every passing week, more and more people are losing their jobs as businesses give up on the UK. It's a weekly basis now. And so she's already screwing over loads of lives because of this. Then, so if she was going to do that, what she needs to do is run down the clock completely. Now, by setting it the 14th of March, she's not doing that. She could have set it the week after. And she could have set it quite plausibly the week after by saying, well, actually, there's an EU summit then. And I can go there and never mind just keep going back to Brussels and talking with the European Council, because that's getting me nowhere. I could go to the summit and meet with actual heads of government and thrash it out with them. To which a load of her MPs would go, oh, yeah, do that. And obviously get nowhere. But by the time she came back, Parliament would be voting for it, basically, at the last. And she could actually have them vote for it on the very last Thursday, the day before we leave. No time to do anything then. It's like, vote for it or out with no deal. Your choice. So she hasn't done that. She still left it bloody late, but there's a couple of weeks grace. So, I'll say a couple of weeks grace. Yeah, there is. Yeah, 2 weeks. So she hasn't run it down as far as she can. So then you open up the alternative, which is that as a Remainer, she's towed this line all the way through, which has still been very, very damaging to the whole argument. This is the problem. Like before the referendum, you had some people going, oh, the EU's evil, really bad, we should be out of it. And other people going, don't be daft, it gives us this, this, this and this. Whereas since then, it's like no party, some MPs, but no party has been willing to actually stand up and say, actually, no, the European Union is really good for us. So people who won't pay attention and critically think about what's been said to them have now been fed on a diet, instead of alternate views, and they've just picked one, they've now been fed on a diet of oh, yeah, we should leave the EU. Because everyone's saying it. Absolute madness, just out of party politics. And this has allowed a weird form of doublespeak straight out of Orwellian 1984 to exist. Because before the referendum, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, all the big Brexiteers were all saying, of course we're going to remain in the single market. It'd be mad not to. Yeah, we're going to be just like Norway, just like Switzerland, and possibly with less chocolate and cuckoo clocks, that's all. And then it allowed people now to be in the position where we go, of course we shouldn't be in the single market. Of course we're not going to be anything like Norway and Switzerland. That'd be madness. And people have been able to do this in their own heads without, it's like, how did that work in your heads? Really, seriously, explain it to me. But because they've only been fed on a diet of this, and everyone else has towed that line. This minority in Parliament. So what she could do is get to the last moment. MPs vote it down on the 14th of March. So then she has to stand up and say, right, so you don't want my deal then. I'm only guessing because you seem to have voted it down about 3 times now. So I'm just getting a slight hint that you're not very keen on it. Now, you've already said you don't want no deal. At that point, she can now acknowledge the fact, well, she sort of already has, technically she already has, acknowledged the fact that a majority of Parliament have said they don't want no deal either. She can now say, right, the negotiating is over. The fact that we were threatening no deal hasn't worked at all. They haven't backed down. It's no deal. That's what we're now looking at. We're looking at no deal. But you also said you don't want a no deal. So you tied my hands. I've tried to deliver Brexit. You've tied my hands. I can't do anything about it. So we're going to have to go for another referendum. And it's all your fault. And she'll point at Labour benches as well. That was actually what was quite hilarious this week. So it's been half term as a teacher. I've been off this week. I've been able to watch a lot more of the debates in the Commons. They're not as boring as you might imagine. But I remember a couple where Labour MPs kept standing up and again insisting that the government remove no deal off the table. And both Andrea Leadsom, in particular, I was watching the Solicitor General saying, well, if you want to remove no deal off the table, then what you need to do is to vote for Theresa May's deal, the government's deal, and that will remove it. Not one of those Labour MPs, not a single one of them, said, hang on a minute. Labour produced a manifesto where we said what we want of a Brexit deal. Your deal doesn't contain any of those points whatsoever. So, of course, Labour can't vote for it because we'll be going back on our own manifesto. However, why don't you tell your own MPs to vote for it? Because if your own MPs voted for it, it might actually just get through. Not a single Labour MP did that, turned it back on them. Bloody amateurs, seriously. Well, these munchkins that we vote to Parliament. Anyway, that was that. So those are the 2 alternatives. Now, that doesn't mean to say that this is how it's going to play out. That doesn't mean to say that there's going to be a vote on the 14th of March, at which point either one of 3 possibilities. 1, MPs actually crack and vote for it because they're just sweating and think, Jesus. But I don't think that's realistic. The ERG will not vote for it, despite them saying, oh no, we totally want a deal. There's only like one of our members that wants no deal, which is what they were saying this week. Don't believe a word of it. Anyone who encouraged the Prime Minister to go and renegotiate an aspect of the agreement that cannot be renegotiated is deliberately just helping her run down the clock. So they don't want a deal. And the 14th of March, if it gets voted down, there can't be a deal. So they will vote against it. No questions about it. The DUP, of course, will also vote against it. Jeremy Corbyn will tell Labour to vote against it. So even if there are some Labour rebels that are just sweating over it and think, do you know what, sod it. Even if I have to resign and join the new independent group, I'm voting for this because Christ almighty. Even if that happened, it wouldn't be enough of them. Would not be enough of them. So it won't go through. Because Jeremy Corbyn, I don't think really minds going out with no deal. I genuinely believe he'd prefer not to. I genuinely believe he'd prefer to go out with a commitment to a customs union. I'm not 100% certain. I'm happy to believe that. But he will vote this one down, of course. Otherwise, it's him backing down. He's not going to do that. So, and blame the Conservatives. And the Conservatives will blame Labour, and that's it. But there is another possibility. So let's just quickly go through them. One, Theresa May at that point stands up and says, right, we've tied my hands. No deal it is then. Sorry, 2 weeks till no deal. Two, she stands up and says, well, you've tied my hands. It's all your fault. The only way out of this, we're completely deadlocked. We've now got to issue a referendum. This is the last thing I wanted to do. It's an absolute last resort, but we've run out of time. Time is now up. And then you'll find out what she's actually been talking to the EU Council about. It certainly isn't the backstop. It is the conditions under which an extension can be arranged. And that'll have all been done in advance, of course. You don't start negotiations on that with only 2 weeks left to go. So that's another possibility. There is, of course, the outside possibility that MPs will vote for her deal. I don't believe that. Then there's the other possibility, the fourth possibility. And that is that MPs who are currently have no idea what Theresa May actually intends at this point, because her actions, although the fact that she's not running down the clock as late as she could, if she really wanted MPs to sweat over it and vote her deal through, or if she actually wanted to take us out with no deal, she could have delayed it till a week later. She could have run down the clock until after the summit. She hasn't done that. That to me suggests more of a referendum-y type intention. But MPs cannot be sure of that. They may take it into their own hands. Jeremy Corbyn is again, he's still not committing himself onto it, but he keeps talking about them implementing their alternative plan. Now, their alternative plan could well be, finally, at long last, backing what the Labour membership have been telling him to back. His parliamentary party, the Labour members, Momentum, everyone, a bloody people's vote. He might actually be getting ready to do that. But it's equally possible that all he's going to do is put forward yet another motion that will not get a backing in Parliament like he keeps doing, and telling his MPs, or at least not encouraging his MPs, to vote for the sensible motions put forward by the likes of Yvette Cooper, for example. He has been avoiding the whole deal. Now, it may be that he finally gets it into his head that although, yes, a third of people who voted for Labour in the last general election were people who voted to leave the EU, and he doesn't want to upset them, someone might actually point out the arithmetic there and say, but that means that there were 2/3 of people who voted for Labour that voted to remain, and do you really think you're going to lose more Leavers if you back a referendum than you will Remainers if you let us crash out with no deal? So it might be possible that his senior leadership team, which I gather, Sir Keir Starmer definitely is arguing for this. I gather John McDonnell as well. They're two key figures within the Labour leadership. It might well be that they are actually managing to get this message through his thick skull. And if all else fails, I've already sort of joked about this, they could threaten to lock him in a cupboard until he behaves himself. That might work as well, or lock him in his allotment shed or something. I don't know. Bury him in his allotment shed. But don't do that. I'm not serious about that. So it's possible. We'll just have to find out what he means by alternative plan. And that should happen this week. Because if the Labour leader, if the leader of the opposition fully gets behind something like this, it could get through. Because anyone else putting it through, even if it gets the majority of the House, it's not necessarily binding. He's got the power to actually unite the House behind him and force Theresa May's hand. And she may not mind that, because if her hand is actually genuinely forced, then it shifts blame away from her. So she might be okay with that as well. Maybe that's what she actually wants secretly as well. So those are the possibilities. So although there's not going to be a vote this week, it is almost certain that there is going to be some interesting news. Well, there's always interesting news, but particularly interesting Brexit news this coming week. We'll have to see how it pans out. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.